So welcome to our coffee break event, everyone. We will be showcasing Panther 5.60. Yep. You'll be able to see what Panther 5.60 looks like, as well as some of its new features. Your speakers today are yours truly, myself, Amrith Maldonado. I am the products team lead here, and along with my senior developer, Glenn Silverberg, he will be doing a fantastic demo. Sorry, did someone say something? All good? Okay, moving on. Agenda. What will we be talking about? I'll first cover what's new in Panther 5.60. I'll just talk about it, kind of give you details, 1 or 2 lines about each feature. There are about 7 or 8 different features that we've added to 5.60. Then Glenn Silverberg will come in and demonstrate a couple of them, the cool new features. And that should leave us enough time, about 5 to 7 minutes for questions. But like I said, feel free to stop us at any time during the presentation. This is a very informal, coffee break. So grab your coffee. I've got mine here. So let's get going here. What's new in 5.60? Python, folks. Can you believe this? Panther now speaks Python. Imagine incorporating your Python script as logic in your Panther screens. So all you need to do, if you like to use this feature, is just set SMPython library in your environment to Python's interpreter. If you don't care to use Python, that's fine. Do not set it, and there will be no overhead. In fact, Glenn will come in and kind of show you how to incorporate script into your existing Panther screens or even your new Panther screens if you're doing any new development. Next feature is our file drag and drop into Panther widgets. Pretty cool feature, folks. So basically, you're able to drag and drop images or documents into your Panther screens. You could be doing this today, but this feature will allow you to not manually have to do it. It's going to save you a lot of time in coding using this feature. And Glenn will actually show you how this is done in his demo. Another feature is our multi-factor authentication integration along with a new QR code property for dynamic widgets. Now, these two features work hand in hand, and this basically gives your application the ability to secure it. When your users log into your Panther application, you can secure it by your regular user password, but it gives you another level of authentication by requiring them to enter a time-based one-time passcode. We will not be demonstrating this, but Nazir is going to pop in a link to our YouTube video that we've created that will kind of show you how this feature works. Also, when you download Panther 5.60, we've added a new samples folder. So the screens you see in that YouTube video are incorporated in the samples folder. And of course, feel free to reach out to us if you need help running this feature. Our Panther Web customers, yes. So now with Panther Web, your Panther Web broker, you're able to apply some, cool styling mechanisms, your span tags and your CSS, kind of giving your applications more of a contemporary look. Also, our JServer, which is your Panther Web engine, now creates a lot more cleaner HTML code. So that's definitely a plus. Our Panther JE customers, yeah, we've got a couple of them here in our call, but now our Panther JE server is compatible with Jakarta EE specs. What does this mean to you? Well, you're able to now deploy your Panther components within the latest versions of Tomcat and TomEE. So that's a plus. You asked about database. Yes. So what we've incorporated into our database drivers is your common table expressions support. Now, common table expressions, if you don't know what that is, it allows you to break down your big, messy SQL queries into smaller, easier to read SQL queries. So this is supported throughout for all your native drivers here. One last thing I want to point out is, remember, folks, we do have our documentation on our website, prolifics.com/USA Panther-doc documentation. And I'm just going to show you what our documentations look like today. There we go. Prolifics.com, USA, Panther Documentation. You can click on Access Panther Docs. And remember, you may have these all these books on your shelves today, the setting up guide, new users reference. So all that's pretty much the same. And we've added, some new functions in them. But to look at, I want to point out the release notes here. All right, so this lists all the releases for the past few decades, different versions you've seen, as well as their new features and bug fix list. So if you click on new features, the list I went through with you is listed right here, but you can click on each link, like for your Python 3 integration. Glenn put this documentation together. It goes through everything you need to know to incorporate Panther into incorporate Python into your Panther documentation, as well as samples. It's very well written, a lot of detail here. You can also have a visit here in our bug list fix, to know what's been fixed in Panther 5.60. And you may be interested in other versions of Panther because you could be still at Panther 5.5 or 5.5.3 or 5.5.2. So the URL again is, where was that? Right. Prolifics.com, USA, Panther Documentation. Okay, let's get back to Glenn. And we have another slide. Let me get to your slide. So Glenn's going to talk about his Panther integration goals. Go ahead, Glenn.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so as Amrith was saying, we increased the version number to 5.60 because it is primarily a feature-rich version of Panther, mainly for this feature. So for Python integration, I had thought about this a long time ago, many years back, and we had done some experiments early on to see whether we could do this, and it wasn't until several years later when I started working in Python a lot more, when I realized that we could really achieve a lot of the things I wanted to achieve in order to do it. Early on, I had looked at scripting engines for Java to maybe see if we could use it's basically a Jython-based scripting engine that comes with Java. But that only supported version 2.0 of Python, and I didn't think that was already an old version when I was looking into this. So I wanted to achieve these 5 things. I wanted to be able to make sure that you could use Python in Panther development in the same way you use JPL, so that it's seamlessly integrated and it should still be rather Pythonic, but still it's much easier to use it than say Java, because it's a scripting language. It's not burdened with you don't need to necessarily define a lot of types. It's not burdened with having to call functions to do everything, and that was my first goal. Second, be able to reference fields by name directly as if they are Python variables. I thought that was important to make it seamless, and there are Python classes that wrap the widgets and screens so that you can reference instances of those classes directly, and they're made global. Third thing was reference Panther properties directly as if they are Python attributes. And you're able to, with Python, modify what the operators do. So in order to treat Panther properties of fields, properties of screens, widgets, as attributes, we have, within our classes, we've modified what the dot operator will do so that it can work with properties instead of attributes. So you basically use the dot operator in much the same way you'd use the arrow operator in JPL. Using Python, number 4, using Python functions for entry, exit, validation, and control strings. It's very important, I thought, that we should be able to call Python functions just like you can use C functions in Panther as prototyped functions. They are basically like prototype functions, and they have some of the same limitations, but you can attach Python functions to any of these places that you can call C functions. And the last item, call Panther library functions from Python code. That was actually the very first thing that I experimented with to make sure that we could do that, because that makes it possible to do all the other things. The wrapper classes that act as basically proxies for Panther functionality require the ability to call the Panther APIs, and but they can't do everything. So you still need to be able to use the Panther library functions from Python, and you can. So now the next thing I want to do is share my screen and show you the demo. It's a very small demo, but I think it will show you all of those 5 things that are on that list. This is basically an old thing that was developed in Jam many years ago, and as part of an experiment, we thought, well, let's see if we can convert it to use Python instead. And one of the members of our team, I think it was Sanjay, did this work. And I may have modified it slightly, but it's mostly his work. So there are basically 3 screens in here, a login screen, and these 2 screens.
Sharing?
Oh, I'm not sharing. I apologize. Did I not share?
There we go.
Thank you, Amrith.
No problem.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
Okay, so let me just minimize this. Okay, so there are 3 screens in this library, and you heard what I said before about them. There's a login screen, which I'll open to show you first, and then there's 2 other screens which represent basically a master detail type of thing. And let me just show you how it works. First, you go into the login screen, type the user. That's the correct password. Login successful. This is a message box that's coming from a print statement in Python. Then we have this other screen which opens, and 2 buttons. Search button shows you the list of the customer list of this Panther Bank of New York. You can select one of them and then get the details for that user. So we have Aladdin, and Aladdin A. Disney has these personal information details. And select Snow White. We can see Snow White's details and so forth. So let me go and show you how this is implemented. We'll go into this login screen. So the login button has on it a control string, validate_login. The screen has some Python code attached to it. There's a validate_login function. And one of the things you might notice here is that initially we're using some DM functions which are built into Panther. We don't have the ability to do embedded SQL in Python, because although you can modify what operators do in Python, you can't add keywords. You can't change syntax. So this was sort of a 6th goal that I felt we could live without being able to do this, because these DM DBMS statements, actually, the strings you pass to them are basically what you would pass in, or basically the same thing you would have in a DM DBMS statement in JPL. So validate login, if we're already logged in, we do pass. Pass is a no-op in Python. Otherwise, we declare the connection, and then we print connected to EntBank. I think you probably saw that. The print statement is basically something that you can modify what it does. It's a built-in function, but we provide a module, Python module, that you can modify to make it do something different. That by default, we have it calling SM message box. You might want to change, say, the title of the message box, or do something else with it. So the DM DBMS alias matches this field down here on the screen. And what we're doing here is it's being returned by the select statement here. We're selecting the employees. You can see the whole thing there. Let me bring up the external editor so you can see it a little bit better. Maybe that helps a little bit. This is Visual Studio Code. So the match may have been used at one point for something else, but if the value is greater than 1, it's a success. And you saw the login successful message. We then unget the PF4 key if we're successful. Let me go back and show you what that is. So the PF4 key has on it a control string which opens the cust list screen. And we'll go to that screen next. Let's close this. And your cust list screen, when it opens, it doesn't do anything on opening. You have to press one of these buttons. Search button does a search _ cust validation function. And the details button does a send _ SSN validation function. These are also implemented in Python. Notice that even though they're validation functions, we're not providing in the parameter list the arguments that these functions can receive. You can receive the arguments if you want. You just have to add them and use type hints so that Panther knows what types those arguments are supposed to be when it calls it. This again, another DBMS statement doing an SQL select. We're going to select the owner. These are the fields in the grid that's on the screen. Owner SSN, first name, last name from the customer database. And then to get the value of the DM row count variable, for other globals that you would have access to in, say, JPL, you can reference them directly by name in Python, but @ variables start with an @ sign, and Python doesn't allow you to define variable names that begin with an @ sign. So you can use SM and intval to retrieve that value. You could do this in JPL too, you just wouldn't need to. We get the row count, and if there are no rows found, we weren't in that situation, we do a print, we do the message box. Then that fills this array, and then when we selected the details button, it would call the send SSN function. That first thing that does, and here you're seeing this for the first time, where we're referencing the grid current awk property of customer _ grid. That's the name of this grid frame on the screen. And that just tells you what is the currently selected, or the place where the cursor is within that grid frame. And gives you a row number back to tell you what row you're on. And then here we're seeing that you can index owner SSN is the first column, the name of the array in the first column. And you can see here that you can index that by row number, just as you would a Panther array in JPL. And it's one base, just like in JPL. We've modified the functionality of the set item and get item of the array class that owner SSN is basically implementing in Python. And that returns the social security number that's at that row. We then pass that in on the next line in the SM _ send function. SM _ in JPL, you would just use the send verb, send command in JPL. Again, we can't modify Python to add keywords, but using SM send, you use it in just the same way you'd use the send word in JPL. And one difference here is that this is an F string. If you know Python, you know that an F string lets you basically stringify the value of a variable by enclosing it in curly braces within the string. And here you can see that we're doing that with this SSN _ value, which is in this case, it's a Python variable, I believe, on the screen. It's a Python variable. You can do this with fields as well. And then we're going to, after we do this send, to send the selected social security number, we're going to unget the PF4 key. Let's moving on. Ungetting the PF4 key opens the cust detail screen as a sibling window. That's the third screen in this list. Let's close this for now. I don't want to close that. I didn't change anything. I'll say no. And let's just open the cust detail screen. This screen opens and it also has Python attached to it. Oh, I didn't show you. This is on screen entry. This is an entry function, get cust detail. So now we're using an entry function. And here I did add to what Sanjay had done. I added the arguments for screen entry functions, the two that Panther can take, just to show you that you can do that. And here you can, by default, we return ints, just like in JPL, but you could add a type hint for this if you wanted to by doing that in Python if you wanted to add a type hint for that. This first thing we're going to do is we're going to receive the social security number from the bundle, and then we're going to call DMDBMS to select the customer that has that social security number. Here again is the F string, and here owner SSN is a field on the screen. Earlier, you might have seen that I used a value on the match field, use the value. It's a pseudo property of a field to get the content of that. But when you stringify a field with the curly braces, we have in the field class a built-in implementation of the __stir function in Python that will automatically just get you the value, so you don't need to use the pseudo value property that we've implemented on the field for that. And F strings are really nice with these kinds of things. They're a little bit safer than, say, colon preprocessing because F strings only work within strings. So even though you could have mistakenly, you could do code injection by accident even with an F string if you're doing like what we're doing here, where we're taking a string and using it as code. Generally, you don't have that problem with Python because in other places where you're not using a string as code, you can only use F strings in strings, whereas in JPL you can use colon preprocessing anywhere. And that could lead to code injection accidentally if you're retrieving that field value from, say, what a user types in. So that's basically the end of this little demo. And I think it covered all of the things very minimally that you can do with this. There's more extensive things you can do, and we have samples that show that. And certainly with Python, you have access to all of the various Python modules that other people have built, and you can import them and do lots of neat things in Python that you can't do so easily in JPL. Does anybody have any questions before I show the next demo?
I just have one question. I was wondering, so if you have an existing Panther application and you wanted to add some Python functionality, is it that you just create a new library and all you have in that library is Panther screens or functions, or can you just kind of put it in different libraries?
Okay, so your Python code can be in libraries, in Panther libraries, or it can be in SMPath. So rather than you can import, modules you get from other sources or the standard Python modules with import statements, either in your script that's attached to the screen. You can do an import up here. So basically, when we load Python code, we load the default packages or modules get loaded using the standard loading techniques that Python would use. But if you write your own and you put them in SMPath or in a Panther library, we'll load them from there as well. And if we load them, and only those that are loaded from there can contain prototyped, what I'm saying are functions that you can call directly from Panther as hook functions. So you can put them in your Panther libraries, or you can have them loose just like you can with JPL. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, thank you.
And if you don't want to use Python, that's fine too. You don't have to. And if you rebuild your old application and you don't set SM Python library, it won't load Python. It'll behave just like it did before. And if you want to really make sure that it's not going to load Python library, you can recompile your you can build your we've modified the jmain.c that comes with the product and jxmain.c. We've modified those to initialize Python if you have the Panther library Python SM Python library variable set. But if you just don't use those and you use your old you build your application the same way you've been building it all along with the older jmain.c, it'll build the same way as before, and it will just completely ignore Python.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We've got a couple minutes left, Glenn.
All right, let me go quickly then to show the drop target. This is really very simple. I just did this the other day. Basically, this is a dynamic label. It has a validation function called myval. It has this new property called drop target. And drop target, by default, the drop target is the label itself. And I'll just show you this quickly. Go into test mode. And of course, I neglected to open Explorer. Okay, so here's Explorer. Sorry, back to Explorer. Everything is large on my screen, so you could all see it. Normally, I don't work with something, the view this large. I can just drag this in here. Now that's implemented by functionality in the screen itself, where I'm just changing the active pix map on the field in that validation function. So, but what's going on is what the feature actually does is it lets you drag from Explorer files into the widget itself, and then what happens is the paths to those files could be more than one. Unlike, say, our SMJ file box, which only supports a single selecting a single file, you can drag multiple files into this target, and in this case, it's a dynamic label, so the path just populates the dynamic label, and then automatically the validation function is executed. And in this case, the validation function for this is a Python function, just because I could do it in Python. And here you can see I passed in the arguments, field number, field data, field occurrence, the flags, because this is a validation function. So the field number comes first, and taking the field number and for a screen, the self instance, Python. In this case, self instance is automatically made to be an instance of the screen class, which is this screen. Even though I didn't pass it in as it didn't specify it as an argument, and it's not actually a method of screen, it's actually a function. We modify the context in which it's called so that there is a self reference to the screen. And screens are also dictionaries in Python. So, and all of the fields are members of the dictionary by name or by field number. So, and by field number, what I mean is we have to put the pound sign in front. So this is an F string with a field number. And then we reference the active pixmap property and set it to be the path. And magically, Panther changes the active pixmap to what you just saw. If there was no active pixmap, just to show you what would happen, here's a library and not a, here Panther cannot make that library the active pixmap. And now you can see that it really is just a dynamic label, and behind the image, when there is one, there's content. And the content here is just the path to that library. And you can have a drop target. If you saw that on the property, just make so I can do this quick. Oh, I closed it all. Trying to do this quickly. Yeah, you can have a drop target. That you can have a drop destination for the drop target. So the values that you drop don't have to go into that label. They can go into a different field. And like I said, you can drag and drop multiple files. So if you use an array, it might be you can make it a hidden array, and it'll receive multiple paths to the array elements. And each one will get a call to its validation function with the occurrence for that. And you can do something with each of those files that get dropped. Are there any questions on this?
Or in general?
Yeah, or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if there are none, I just want to say one last thing. One of the things that's great about Python is you can get a lot of help with Copilot or ChatGPT to write Python. And there's actually a sample that we've provided for the the gridFilter sample that comes with our product. And for that particular sample, which I'm not showing you here, all of the Python code there, I got Copilot to do that. And I didn't show you that because the Python code, I would have trouble explaining it to you. I could, but it's quite complex. And that's one of the cool things about the Python support is that you can get a lot of help from AIs to write it. And if it's wrong, you can, as long as you explain what you want very well, you'll get and explain some of the capabilities that Panther has for AI for the Python. You can get it to write some pretty good Python code.
All right. And no questions, feel free to reach out to us. Also, you can email myself, Glenn, or support. So thank you. So when will this be available, you ask? November 15th. We will be releasing the Windows Comport, as well as 64-bit, of course, and Red Hat and Panther 560 on Red Hat. So let me know if this is something you like to play around with. I can get you a temporary license as long as you're on support. I think all of y'all here are on maintenance. And we'll go from there. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for a great demo. And we will see each other soon. Thank you, Michael. Great to see everyone here. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye,
all.
everybody.
Great demo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bree.